Welcome to the Latino Business Report. This podcast covers business, people, and issues of the day from a Latino perspective. The Latino Business Report is brought to you by TAMAC, the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. TAMAC is the leading Hispanic business organization in Texas since 1975. Now for your host, J.R. Gonzalez.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode. Today we're in downtown Buda, Texas at the Assemblage Contemporary Craftsman Gallery, and sitting right in front of me, we are very, very honored to have Mr. Amado Peña Jr. Amado, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing great.
And to give the audience kind of an idea of what we're doing, Amado is sitting here painting. We have a microphone in front of him. People are coming in and out, so if you hear a little bit of background noise, that's just people coming into the gallery. But Amado, thank you so much for making the time to be on the Latino Business Report. I really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be back in Buda.
Isn't it a great little town?
It's a great little town, obviously, yeah.
Now you had a VIP reception. You're in this week with some of your work being displayed, and this is kind of a retrospective showing for you.
What we've done this year, just a little bit different from the past. I think this is my third exhibit. We brought in some artwork from that goes back to the 80s, just to give a little feel of what it was like or what I was doing then, and then comparing it to what I'm doing currently. And even for myself, it's kind of interesting to go back and see these images. So it's a kind of a small retrospective, very nice.
It is a retrospective, and I must say, sir, that actually you're getting better. I mean, I've always enjoyed your work, and I appreciate it, but some of the stuff I'm seeing on the wall today is just amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's always, I go back to, even I discover some of the images that go back to even to the 70s, and I'm kind of, not necessarily in shock, but it amazes me where the artwork has evolved. And,
right.
As an artist, you're always looking for growth, and to be able to see it and to have it around, because sometimes artwork has a tendency to get lost, or you sell it and then you never see it again. And so it's kind of a nice feel to have it, and it's a nice feel to have it shared with the folks here,
and where people can appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, Amado, you've been doing this a long time. I mean,
I've been doing it for
time.
a long
Now,
time.
you first started painting what, in fourth grade?
In fourth grade, but I'm very fortunate because it's it's one of those things where, as a kid, like any normal kid, I guess, you enjoy doing something that makes you feel a little special. For me, drawing was kind of a fun thing. Mm-hmm. I had I don't know where it came from. I think my folks were just happy that I focused on something that kept me out of trouble.
So self-taught.
Yeah, pretty much, until I had the opportunity to get into an organized art class. But for the most part of my youth, it was kind of on my own, doing what was fun to do. And I mean, not that I didn't do other things, but art seemed to be a fun thing that was kind of isolated.
So at 10 years old, you started drawing and painting, and you were raised in
Laredo, Texas. Yeah.
And a lot of your early stuff was what? Just cows?
Well, it was just, I'm very fortunate as a child, because my parents were very, very much concerned about our growth and knowing where we came from. And my dad grew up in a ranch, and so he used to take me down there every weekend and holidays, and to the point that I almost wanted to move away and just live with my second family, my uncle and my cousins. But to have that experience, and so a lot of what I drew came from that. A lot of corrals and windmills and cows and horses and landscapes. But again, these were things that as a kid you look at and you remember, and you say, okay, hey, this is fun to do. And so I just did it. I mean, I had no idea that.
But it definitely influenced your
Well,
art.
It kept me doing it. That's the whole
Okay.
thing. Yeah, it kept me doing it. It kept, not to lose interest in doing that, because again, there's a lot of other stuff that as a kid you're growing up and you get influenced by and you have to do. And you grow up as a teenager, the same thing, but the art itself seemed to find a special place for me. And a special that I always wanted to not only just do it, but be better than anybody else that did the same thing. So there was a competitive drive. But I think that very fortunate to be given the opportunity in school and then to continue on. And when I went out to college, that I knew there was something that I wanted to do. I didn't know that I had a future in it, but I wanted to do that.
Let's fast forward from age 10 when you started to college. You raised in Laredo, but you actually went to Texas A&I?
I went to Texas A&I in Kingsville. At the time I was at college. There were I think 1,500 students at the time when I was there.
And now they're part of the Texas A&M system.
Right.
And you got your undergraduate degree?
Yeah, I got my bachelor's degree there. Came back to my hometown and got a teaching job. And of course, art was the field that I went into without really knowing that I was going to be teaching for a long period of time after that. And it became my second passion besides my artwork was teaching. I didn't know that was going to be the case, but it did a lot for my development as a person and also my development as an artist. It all kind of fell in together. So I tried doing that. Went back to grad school, got my graduate degree, and also in art, and now added on education as a secondary, and returned back to teaching. But it's still the wanting to focus on my artwork was still very important, and I spent 16 years kind of doing both.
But even as a teacher, I understand you set up a little studio.
I had a studio, and I always did my artwork. Not knowing a future in that particular, having being a professional artist or an art career.
Amado, did you ever think as a young teacher right out of school, having a little studio in your apartment doing art that you don't get to this level?
It was independence. It's like, okay, I'm on my own. I'm not in a classroom anymore. I don't have a teacher looking over my shoulder, and so I've got to learn how to be disciplined. I've got to learn how to, if this is going to be my love, I better devote myself to it. It's like I said, I'm very fortunate because it also a lot of support around me that came from friends and family, and it's really funny when I look back. Even a negative support became positive for me. It kind of challenged me more to continue.
You turned it around, huh?
Yeah, and so, but again, it's what was somehow it was just in me that something that was so important that I had to do, and I had to find out how to succeed in it. And like I said, there was a lot of other people that were responsible for me making the choices that I did. My students, for example, played a big role in the sense that made me realize that if I was going to be doing this on a full-time basis, that I had to find out what was out there, and so that I could provide them with answers for them as well. Because what if I wanted to do art and I didn't want to go to college, for example? Mm-hmm. I had no way of telling them that they could actually succeed at doing their artwork if they go out and find the resources to do it. And it wasn't necessarily college, even though college education was important.
Right.
But a lot of kids did not want to proceed, but I had no answer. And so
it was a different time, it was a different world.
It's a different world altogether, yeah.
And speaking of a different time, as a young teacher, you ended up in Crystal City for a while.
Yes. I went to Crystal City to set up
at the height of the political.
It was at the height of the Chicano movement and the birth of the Raza Unida Party, and that had an influence in my work, because I found it necessary as an artist to be able to contribute something to the movement, and not just that, but also it was a journey that we talked about. The Chicano movement, one of the philosophies had this cultural revolution, in a sense, of finding out our identity, where we came from. And our reference had always been Mexico, but that was not necessarily the only reference we had, and so it took a lot. I mean, it took a lot to be able to understand, especially as for me, mm-hmm. Individually, everything is going on, but that wasn't enough. You had to find out me personally, where I fit and what, if I'm going to be part of this, why am I part of this? Is it just because my last name is Peña, or because, I come from this neighborhood, or I come from this background? Right. I mean, there's a lot of other, and the part of it is again, how do I participate? I mean, I wasn't a political, and I wasn't into politics, but I had a tool. and I could create images that
You
represented the time.
You had a medium.
Yeah, I had a medium, and so I did that, and for a very, very long period of time, not only did I create images that were related to the movement, but also it did a lot for me personally to rediscover myself and my roots, and how important that history was. We talked about it, but how important was it individually to move on.
And we're talking about discovering yourself. I mean, your dad and mom, your combination with Mestizo and indigenous Yucatan, or what is it?
With my mother's side of the family had a Yaqui background.
Yaqui, okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure that a lot of folks that grew, that were raised in the border had some kind of, I tell people this is my philosophy. What's in our veins, our bloodlines. And if you really, it's not that difficult. Here we are. We're a mixture of two different cultures. We're a mixture of where we came from. If in fact our roots are definitely not in Ireland and not in England or Great Britain, or they're south of the border. Mm-hmm. That's where our roots are. As far back as you want to take them and discover them. And so what are those roots? What really is that culture that we talk about? And the culture is an indigenous mixture of three different characters, or two different characters. And that's what it is. And that's who we are. But we don't necessarily use the term, and we don't necessarily identify with it. But that's the reality of it, of what it is. We say we're all Americans. Okay, you give me that. That's a title you give me. But it's not in our veins that we're talking about. If that's where the roots are, and not by filling out an application that says white, brown, green, and red.
Self-identify.
Yeah.
Well, what's in your veins is very unique because it definitely comes out in your artwork.
And that's what's important.
It's safe to say that your own heritage and your own journey through life has definitely influenced your work.
Definitely. I have to say that is the roots of what I'm doing, So, and what I've done through my career, through what I've done. If I can go back and track them down, they're all influenced by who I am and where I come from.
You have a very unique style, Amado. I'll mention a Peña painting to someone. They go, who, what? And then it says, here, let me show you a few pictures. And I'll get on my smartphone. I show them a few. Oh, yeah, I've seen that before.
I've seen that before.
So, your stuff is everywhere.
Yeah.
At what point, an artist is an artist. You had a teaching gig, so you weren't really a starving artist. But what was that breaking point where you left teaching and became a professional artist? 100%.
It was, realistically, I have to say that I was probably at the right place at the right time in my career, where circumstances happened. I was given an opportunity and I took a chance. And as a result of taking that chance, the domino effect, things happened. And rather than staying in the same place, I decided to move on with the changes. I decided to follow up on rediscovering, for example, in the art business, which has been, if it hadn't been for the business, my exposure would have been very, very minimal.
So what chance did you take?
Somebody discovered me. I call him the Avon Lady of Art.
The Avon Lady of Art?
Yeah.
Okay.
A young man came by my studio in Austin when I first opened it up. I opened my studio, and the majority of my work was in the printmaking medium. I was doing silk screening, and I got a knock on my studio one day, and this guy showed up and said, "Look, I'm an art broker, and I represent these following artists, and I'm interested in your work. And would you be interested in participating in what I do?" And I said, well, I didn't know anything about it, but it looked like a kind of a challenging, and the fact that I didn't know anything about it was even more interesting because I didn't know whether I was going to fit or not. And so I said, okay, I'll take a chance on it. And that was the beginning. And he opened up so many doors for me as a result of taking my work all cross country, literally.
So out of a silk screening shop in East Austin, you took a chance, and then your work
everything happened from there. Yep.
All over the country.
Yep. And it just, again, when good things happen, is how you deal with those. And for me, in terms of whatever success initially I had, I built on that success a little bit at a time. Learned a lot about the business and learned about how things really worked, and made it a point to participate in that, so that I know so many artists that are very good artists, but they're terrible businessmen. You know, and they don't know, they only hear, you know, like for example, they hear how terrible galleries are. That's like the number one. Or how terrible publishers are and so forth and so on. And sure, they're terrible, but if you know how they work and you know how you can be, if you choose to participate and you know how to manipulate that, then you can be successful. And that's all it took. It was so simple.
I mean, we're sitting in a gallery right now.
And we're sitting in a gallery. Here we go. You know, and at one point in my career, I was probably in a gallery almost in every state in the country, in at least one gallery. Not to mention a poster shop or, you know, a gift shop or wherever Southwest art or native art was shown, I was in it somewhere. And that was because we knew how to deal with that. When it reached a point where all of that changed, like everything else changes, and all the galleries that dealt with Southwest and native work that were successful at one time started to close because they weren't making many, you know, their businesses were not doing well. And so what happens? The artists started to fall apart because, again, they can't sell your work. So rather than trying to say, well, my life is over, and you know, what am I going to do? I said, you know, I'm going to continue. I'm going to go on and do what I need to do.
You pivot. You make the adjustment.
Exactly. You pivot and you keep going.
So I guess what really helped you out is that you had a style, and when that whole Southwest art thing was popular, that fit your style.
It fit to what I was doing, yes.
So that kind of gave you that
Yeah,
that
and
boost.
I didn't have to do it just because it was out there. I did it because it was what I was doing.
It's what you did.
Yeah, it's what I
Okay.
did. And that's the difference. That's the difference. And so the compromises that I made in my career had to do with how do you adjust to say, for example, like my choice to go into the poster business. What is that? Well, it opens up so many avenues for you, for an artist, if you can make it work.
Sure.
And so the best advertising in the world is to make a poster and have it distributed all over the country.
In fact, I still have a few of your posters
You
from
know,
the
so-
1980s.
You know, so if anything I did in that particular was that, and that gave me so much exposure. But again, I made a choice. You know, some people criticized me because I was too commercial. Okay, that's coming from this end, but I'm doing it because that's what I need to do to get my name out. If I can't travel over there, my posters are going to get over there. You know, so it was like, okay.
Well, you're always going to have people criticizing, but you made a living. I mean, you are a successful artist, and as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of other people, you're a national treasure, Amado. I mean,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
No. I mean,
There's a perfect example of what has happened in my career. People like you who uses the term a treasure, people like you that look at my work and I appreciate it and create an opinion about it, and the opinion is a great opinion, and that helps. Even though, and through my career, that has been the case where people have written about me or people have expressed themselves, not to, you know, not in this environment, but to a friend and a friend and a friend, and it goes on and on. And when I look back, that's who I thank for being where I am. Well, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here.
I've definitely appreciated your work always. I appreciate it even more. I just wish I could afford more of it.
Well, you know, that comes along. You don't know how many people say, hey, I've had a poster for 30 years, but now I can afford a real one, as they say. They say, okay, thank you so much for the poster. I'm grateful for everything.
Well, Amado, what I envy a little bit is that you're doing what you love. Painting.
I could say that I do.
And have made not only a successful career, but have become, to a lot of people, iconic. I mean, it's a peña.
Yeah, it's a peña.
It's a very distinct style that you can see from across a room or across a gallery. Go, that's a peña.
Yeah. And I owe that to a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people are responsible for where I am, you know, and that's never going to go away, you know, and it helps me understand why I keep doing it as well, you know.
Well, you're Latino and indigenous culture. in your veins, as you say.
It's in my veins.
In your
yeah.
veins. That definitely shows through your work. Okay, we're in Buda, Texas, so that downtown train is going through right now. So
It's a kind of interesting sound.
Amado, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you right now?
I just turned 78.
70.
Yeah.
Well, you look great, by the way.
Well, I appreciate it.
Now, you've been doing this for an awful long time. What is the next phase of Peña's? I mean, as I'm looking at this artwork here, this retrospect, and see the difference, I mean, I'm really liking what you're doing.
Thank you.
I mean, I always have, but your new stuff definitely looks good.
It's having the attitude that there's always growth. There's always room for growth, and I'm interested in all kinds of art. Even though I don't collect it, I'm interested in all kinds of art, and I see myself as still learning. I still approach things in a very simple way. And I don't make it complicated. I don't like making things complicated for what I do, And I have great people that are very, very close to me that are very supportive. My wife is extremely supportive and she's responsible for a lot of.
Is she an artist?
She's an artist as well. My family has been incredible. Like I said, a lot of people are responsible for where I am.
Where do you call home?
Well, that's a hard one. It's kind of like. I'm still a Texas boy, even though I live in New Mexico. Like my wife says, you can take the boy out of Texas, but you can't take the Texas out of the boy.
There you go.
And
we'd like to think you're on loan to New Mexico. You're just on loan for a little while.
But and my roots are here. But I'm very fortunate because I live in New Mexico, and I live in such an environment that is very special. It's very private, very quiet, but not a New Mexican. I just live here. So home is probably still going to be Laredo.
Still have those Texas roots.
Yeah. And I spent more time actually that I can remember here in Austin, which is still also very close to me. I have lots of very good memories. Very, very supportive community. They helped me a lot when I was first starting. And so it's kind of difficult, but it's kind of nice to go home and still visit my grandmother's home where I grew up and have a lot of memories.
Texas
there.
is in the veins.
It's still in the veins.
Sangre.
Yeah.
So as you evolve and your paintings are just amazing, is there anything new? Or are you just going to continue where you're? I can't wait to get back to the studio on Monday and start over again. I miss my little paradise. Your little home studio.
My little studio, because I make it very personal. It's all very personal, and a lot of wonderful things happen in there. And I just, I'm ready to go back. I've enjoyed my family for the holidays, but it's time to get back to. And just continue, really. I have, I've got shows planned. I'll be traveling in the Southwest.
Well, before we wrap up, do you have a website that people can go to and find out where your shows
they can go to peñagallery.com.
PeñaGallery.com.
Yeah,
Okay.
PeñaGallery.com. And if I want to find out about myself, I Google my name. So I use Google a lot.
And see what people are saying about you?
See what they're saying about it. I'm not the one who is in prison or, I'm not the criminal.
Okay. Yeah, Peña is a common name.
Yes, Peña is a common name. But yeah, they can go to peñagallery.com. Keep up with.
Well, Amado, I want to thank you for this time.
Thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure. I've been a fan and admirer for many years, and I just really welcome this opportunity to sit down and get you on a podcast. Any last words you want to leave with the audience before you go?
Just it's nice to be back in Austin, and it's nice to be back in Buda. I really enjoyed my visit here. So
well, it's good to be back in Texas.
It's good to be back in Texas. Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. 12-hour drive was really interesting, but I'm taking my slow. Back home, going back home.
Drive safe. Drive safe. Well, folks, you've been listening to Latino Business Report, and this is an interview with Mr. Amado M. Peña Jr., the famous artist. If you haven't seen his work, go to his website, check it out. And I think things are for sale on your website as well.
Yes, sir, they are. And visit Assemblage to get to see the new show.
Yes, if you're in Central Texas, you can come to Buda, Texas, Assemblage, and over at the Mill and Grain, and check it out. Till next time, folks, be safe, be careful out there. And Amado, once again, thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.